everyone. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello,
to our.
Yasmin, Pedro. All right, Alan. Hey, Jordan, Edmilson, Deborah. Hey. Oh, nice. Okay, yes. Tell us where you're from. Yasmin from São Paulo. Okay. Good afternoon, Edinalva. Mexico City, nice.
Wow.
Salvador, Búzios, Goiás, all right. Curitiba, great. All right. From São Paulo, but in Lisbon, nice. Juazeiro, okay. São Paulo, that's brilliant. Okay. Well, Ilana, hello, Ilana. Where are you from in Brazil? Where are you speaking from? Where are you typing from, rather? Porto Alegre, all right. Okay, so I think we can get started, right? So first of all, I'd like to thank you for being here with us and to welcome you to our talk about CELTA and DELTA and the importance that these certifications have to our English teaching careers, right? So I'm Anamaria Lemos. I've been in the field of ELT for around 30 years now. I've been at Cultura Inglesa for 23 years, and most of this time I've also worked with teacher education, not only as a teacher in the classroom, but working with teacher training and so on. I'm a CELTA and DELTA tutor at Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa, and I think the CELTA is one of my passions, let's say, along with assessment, which is also a great interest of mine, right? So, Cássia, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cássia. I'm a teacher at Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa, and I've been there for the past 5 years. I've worked in Cultura Inglesa São Paulo for about 15 years, and I have just finished my Delta. So I have just received the news that I passed in Module 3. So that was very good news. And I'm also a CELTA tutor in training. So hopefully I can become a CELTA tutor by next term.
Okay, thank you. Hello, let me say hello, Alberto. Good to see you. Like to read you, let's say. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Christina. Hi, Chris. All right, so let me share our presentation, right? I think we can get started. So, as you know, we're talking about the importance of these two certifications in an English teaching career. Which I'm sure you're all interested in because you're here, right? So, our objective today is to, first of all, give you a brief overview, our view of ELT education in Brazil. Then I'll be talking about the CELTA. Of course, Cássia will be joining me, but she'll be focusing more on the DELTA later on, right? So I'm going to tell you what the CELTA is about and why take it, right? And then Cássia will be talking about how to take your career to the next level, right, Cássia, with the DELTA certification.
Exactly.
Yeah? All right. So, Cássia, I don't know if you agree with me, but teacher education, ELT teacher education in Brazil has several drawbacks and issues, right? I mean, it's a very informal market, and many, I don't know, maybe the majority of English teachers don't have any kind of background education in teaching itself, right?
Exactly. And even when we think about teachers that do have a letras degree in Brazil, what happens is that only in the past 5 years, more or less, our Ministry of Education released this rule that letras courses, they needed to be only for one specialty. So you either take letras in Portuguese or you take letras in English. back in the day, so for example, when I was a grad student, I could take 2 languages. So I could take English and Portuguese during my graduate studies. And studies show that in many colleges here in Brazil, the foreign language was it was not very much studied. So you had teachers that graduated as letras like Portuguese and English, but couldn't really speak English, and that represented a huge drawback, right, to our profession.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that you have just said that there are many teachers that don't have a grad, like any kind of certification. So
That's
it's
right.
still a very, yes, exactly. It's still a very
Yeah,
informal area, unfortunately,
that's
right?
right. And even the those who have a degree, uh, it doesn't guarantee that they will have had any kind of focus on teaching practice itself during
Exactly.
college. So this is
Mm-hmm.
another issue that we have with teacher education Brazil in general. And why is this important to us? Because I think this is one of the reasons that the CELTA and then the Delta are so
Mm-hmm.
relevant to so many English teachers in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
because it really fulfills this need for more formal training in something that perhaps I already do, right?
Yes. And
So
formal, but
yeah,
also practical, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
with a great focus on teaching practice itself. So I think this is basically one of the main reasons, right? We have some questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So,
Alan, is that yes? Can
um,
I answer Juliana's question? Juliana,
mhm.
unfortunately, the iCelt has been phased out. It doesn't exist anymore. So we used to have the CELTA and then the iCelt and then the Delta. So it was kind of in between. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist any longer, right? Oh, you have the iCelt. Great.
Yes,
Well
I
done.
also have ICELT, Juliana. I took them sort of like in a row. So I took CELTA, then ICELT, and then Delta. So I can
Yeah,
tell you a little, because I feel that ICELT is sort of like a little bit more than CELTA and a little bit like
yeah,
preparation for
that's
Delta. But
right.
when
Yeah,
I talk about Delta, I can talk a little bit about the differences between
yeah.
ICELT and Delta.
Yeah, but Juliana, don't worry because like your iCell certificate is still very, very much
Mm-hmm.
valid, right? So no worries there, right? Um, so what's the CELTA about? I'll give you some information, some practical information, then we will comment on a few aspects of the course. So the CELTA, as you probably know, is an international teaching certification or award, which basically prepares you to teach anywhere in the world. So the CELTA is widely accepted, right? You have Brazilian teachers of English who are CELTA certified, teaching in different places in the world. And of course, the CELTA is available in all European countries and so on, right? So you need to have at least C1 level, right? C1 proficiency level to do the CELTA. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to have the certification C1, like for example, the C1 Advanced from Cambridge, but you need to prove that you have a C1 level during an interview, right? The CELTA is originally for teachers with little or no experience. However, we have a huge number of experienced teachers also taking the CELTA, and I'll talk a little bit about what there is for them a little bit later on, right? So we have very mixed groups. We have, for example, people who are um, teaching the first time ever in the CELTA. So their teaching practice one, TP1 as we call it, is the first time ever teaching, right? So you can imagine the kind of exchange of experiences and perspectives that we have because of this. So this is actually a very good thing, right? So what is it about continuing? So the CELTA basically covers um, 5 different topics. We have learners and teachers in the teaching and learning context. So, who are my learners? How do I get to know them? What is the context in which they are learning English? And what impact should this have on my planning and teaching, and so on? We have another topic related to language analysis and awareness. So, how much language do I know? What is my language awareness in terms of English? And how, to what depth should I analyze language um, in order to deliver my lesson? And then we have a focus also on language skills. So we work on teaching the receptive skills, but also productive skills, and what that entails in terms of teaching, what kind of lesson frames are necessary, are there specific techniques, and so on. Then we also have as a main topic planning. Lesson planning is an important part of the CELTA, and selection and design of resources for the different teaching contexts. And finally, our 5th topic is what we call developing teaching skills, but also professionalism. I particularly find this aspect of the CELTA very interesting because it's all about giving feedback, receiving feedback, taking feedback on board, um, meeting deadlines, working collaboratively. So in our CELTA at Faculdade, this is, for us, is one of the main things. We try and provide as many opportunities as possible for the candidates to work collaboratively and support each other, right? So these are the 5 like macro topics of the CELTA, let's say. Um, One second here, waiting for it to load. So the CELTA consists of 120 contact hours, which are basically the input sessions, the collaborative planning sessions, or assisted lesson planning, as we call it, the feedback, right? These are the contact hours. On top of that, candidates are also required to do around 80 self-study hours. What does that mean? What are these hours about? Well, you have lesson planning, designing materials for your lesson if necessary, reading, writing assignments, and so on, right? So it is quite intense in terms of the workload. Yeah, and speaking of the workload, we have different modes, right? So we have face-to-face CELTA, which we haven't had in the last 2 years because of the pandemic, right? In the face-to-face, you can have the part-time, which takes place over a semester, or the intensive, which is 1 month. Which this is super intensive, but very useful for teachers who have you have your holidays in January, for example, or July, right? We also have the 100% online mode, which means that you do your TP, or teaching practice, via Zoom, but the input sessions are on the Cambridge Moodle, so you don't have live input sessions via Zoom, right? This can also be done. We haven't had this for a while either, but you can also have the input via Cambridge Moodle, and the TP, the teaching practice, live face to face. And then this is more intensive. So you do like 2 weeks in July, or let's say 2 weeks in January. And last but not least, we offer the online live CELTA, which is what we've been doing the last 2 years at Faculdade because of the pandemic, which consists of live input sessions via Zoom and TPs also via Zoom. So everything's online, but the input sessions are actually live, right? We have in the CELTA basically three components. I think it's easier to understand what it's about if we divide it into three components: the input component, the written component, and the teaching component, right? So let me tell you a little bit about each one. 1 second here, changing the slide, right? So the input sessions are incredibly important. They cover a wide range of different aspects of teaching and learning and language. So, for example, you might have an input session on classroom management, giving instructions, but you have an input session also on professional development or presenting language via text and so on and so forth. So they're really varied and they're all very important for the teaching practice. And of course, candidates are expected to actually apply the theory to practice in their teaching practice. There's also a lot of reading involved, right? We offer what we call our CELTA library, lots of very useful texts, etc. And of course, candidates have their own libraries, sometimes with some very useful books they refer to, and they refer to these books as their best friends during the CELTA. So that's the input. The written component consists of 4 assignments, which also cover a range of aspects of teaching and learning and language. These assignments are not that long, but they do require research. For some people, it's the first time they write in a more academic style, and they kind of, how can I say, they also have an impact on the teaching practice, right? Because it's a time aside for research, for thinking, and writing is a very reflective activity. So we also expect to see the connection there. The teaching practice, for me personally, I think this is the major plus of the CELTA course, because someone had asked earlier about TESOL, right? I don't remember who asked about TESOL. The TESOL courses, most of the ones that I know at least, they don't have this practical aspect of the teaching practice, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the ones that I'm more familiar with, they don't offer this. So in the CELTA, candidates teach a total of 6 hours in 8 different moments. So they teach 8 different classes, and they have to teach at least 2 different levels. And here's the great thing, they teach real students, right? So that makes all the difference. The teaching practice, of course, involves like planning the lesson, presenting your lesson plan. And then after teaching practice, there is feedback, not only from the tutor, but also from the colleagues, which means that many people get to develop the skill of giving feedback, not to students specifically, but to their colleagues. And this is part of the topic that I mentioned earlier, which is called the professionalism, right? So again, I think teaching practice is a major plus, right, in the CELTA, especially the fact that you are teaching like real students, yeah? So having said all this and giving you all this information, I think we have an important question here, which is why take it, right? By the way, Cássia, feel free to interrupt me and comment at any time, right?
Yes.
Someone is asking here, how do we get access to the recording? Mateus, the recording will be made available on the Disal site. Yeah, so don't worry, you can, yeah, you can watch later. Yeah, let me see the best
Anna
option for
Maria,
the. Yes.
sorry, Cristiane asked a question, and it's not that I miss it, it's that I don't know the answer, Cristiane.
Okay,
Because
please.
she asked if candidates need some kind of certification to enter CELTA, like in terms of language, or if just the interview is enough.
The interview, so Kashani, great question. I mentioned the interview earlier, but the selective process for the CELTA, it's there is an interview, but before the interview, you do a pre-interview task. So there's a language task. There you're asked also to write an essay before you do the interview. Why is that? So then we can have a good idea of your language awareness, right? Also, like language awareness, I mean, like your knowledge of terminology, for example. Not that you have to know it, but we need to know if the terminology you will learn the CELTA will be okay, or if it would be at this point in your career, perhaps you're not ready for it. So there are several decisions to be made, but that's why you do the task, the essay, and then the interview. No, you don't need to have a certification, right? It always helps, doesn't it? I mean, not only for the CELTA, but many other things. But no, this will be kind of you will be kind of assessed during the interview, right? So why take the CELTA? Well, um, first of all, I think one of the objectives of the CELTA for me is that you will become a more you will you will teach more communicatively. And what do I mean by this? Because communicative language teaching has become like, what does it mean anymore, right? It's being so overused. But what I mean is that you will work on always presenting language within a communicative context. So this is one of the major things about the CELTA. So teaching communicatively, it's not only about, oh, my students are speaking all the time. No, but it's every time language is presented, whether you are teaching grammar or you're working on reading skills, for example, there's always a clear communicative context, meaning that students have a good idea of how that compares to real life. So we're always talking about things that are actually done in real life. Yes. So not only communicative situations in terms of speaking, but reading as well, right? So why read? So you have a task, a reading task that is something you would do in real life as well. So this is one of the major things for me, right? The other thing is that the CELTA helps you deliver more learner-centered lessons because there is a great focus on always taking into account who your learners are, what their needs are, what their interests are, the background. And so we work on helping teachers to look at this, observe this, discover this, and then to use this awareness in their planning and in their teaching. Yeah. For teachers with no experience or little experience, of course, you will acquire knowledge, you will acquire experience. But what about those who are already experienced? Well, the CELTA is a great opportunity to systematize what you already know and what you maybe already do, right? So if I'm doing it, why do I have to systematize it? To perhaps do it more intentionally. And then after you understand better why you do what you do, you are ready then to start developing more. right? And then later on the delta, but I'm not going to go there yet, right?
Yes, Anamaria,
yes.
something that I felt when I was right after I took CELTA, something that I think it relates to what you have just said. You know that feeling when you're a teacher that you teach a lesson that is great, and then you teach another lesson that is horrible, and you're not exactly sure what happened. Like, why are you teaching lessons that are so great, and why you're teaching lessons that are not that great? Like, what is the magic that happens? And after I took CELTA, that never happened to me again. So it's exactly what you said, right? It's more conscious planning and a more conscious awareness of what goes into your classroom.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And even though I know someone made a comment earlier on in the chat, I read it briefly about the ICELT being about reflective teaching. I would say that so is the CELTA in a way. Of course, the reflection for many teachers with little experience, or even experienced teachers, the reflection starts in the CELTA course, right? It doesn't mean that they will develop reflection to a very high level, perhaps because it's not really the time for them to do this. They're not in that stage of readiness. But there is a lot of reflection involved in the CELTA. And I think that's one further reason to take it, to develop your reflective skills along with your feedback skills. And they go together, don't they? Hand in hand.
Yeah. And actually, to be honest, some like I said, I took all of them, and I think ICELT is more similar to Delta than CELTA, to be honest. But I'll talk more about that. But I think you're
Yes.
totally right, Ana Maria. I agree with you when you say that CELTA is like the beginning of this reflective process on your own teaching, because I feel that teaching is a very different career in the sense that it is very theoretical. We as teachers have to study a lot, but it's also very practical. Like, nobody learns how to teach from reading it in a book. You have to actually go there and teach your learners. So I feel that the CELTA is a very special moment in a teacher's career where they will teach students. They will have a laboratory to apply all these methodologies and all these things that they learn, but they will also do this assisted by a more experienced tutor.
That's
So
right.
the feedback, to be completely honest with you guys, I still remember the feedback sessions that I had when I was taking CELTA. So that's how important it was for me. And I
Yeah.
still think about the feedback that I got. And so it still resonates with me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something I'd like to comment on that Lais said that um, it's not a test then. No, it's not. And I'm glad you said it's a training. Yeah, it's I wouldn't call it well, I would call it more of like a developmental course. And why am I saying this? Because you said you thought it was a test. There is no exam or final test in the CELTA, right? And the assessment in the CELTA is very holistic. So the CELTA is a developmental course. So you are assessed on your planning, your teaching, your awareness of students, meeting deadlines, the way you work collaboratively with your colleagues, the way you give feedback, the way you receive feedback. But you're also assessed on the progress that you have made. And that's why I'm saying it's a developmental course, right? So even though people might start at different stages of readiness, so you have teacher A who's very inexperienced and teacher B who's been teaching for 20 years, they will both be assessed on how much progress they make. So it's not about, for example, saying, oh, here is Lais, let's see how good she is when she arrives at the CELTA, right? No, it's about here is Lais. Let's see where she is at the moment, what she needs to do to move forward. And later on, we look again and say, oh, let's see how much progress she has made, right? So no, there's no test involved, right? So thank you for your comment there, right? Um, all right. So I think that's it for me about the CELTA. I think we can move on to talking about the Delta, right? Cássia, so
Definitely,
over to
definitely.
you.
I'm just finishing. I was just finishing answering a question. So we called Delta like taking the next step in terms of career. So what happens with Delta is that so it is a diploma, right? I have the full name here. So it's the Diploma in Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, assessed by Cambridge English. And in England, uh, there's Ofqual, which is like a board of regulations of certifications in England. So Ofqual considers Delta, the certificate, the same as a master's qualification, meaning that if you decided to take a master's qualification in the UK and you have a Delta, you don't have to write like a dissertation. You just need to do some kind of subject requirement uh, in order to get a master's degree. So Delta is more academic than CELTA in the sense that it represents um, something more advanced because it is thought for more experienced teachers, right? Okay. So who is Delta for? Maybe you heard everything that Anamaria said, and maybe you don't feel that you are this like you don't feel CELTA is for you, maybe because you're already more experienced, or maybe some of you already have the CELTA. Like I read in the chat that some of you you've already taken CELTA. So Delta is for teachers that have C1 level of English, so that's a basic requirement. And it's also required that you have at least 1 year experience with a CELTA, or if you have more experience, but you don't have CELTA yet, but it's more than 1 year experience, then that would be okay as well. It is for people who wish to progress into more senior roles in their careers. So in CELTA, we talk a lot about the role of the teacher in the classroom. In Delta, there's also an opportunity for the teacher to think about their role as a material writer, or their role as a manager, or their role as a coordinator, as a tutor. So you sort of try on different roles when you're taking the Delta, right? And something else that is different is that CELTA is specifically thought for teaching adults. So maybe when you're taking CELTA, maybe there will be one session, right, Anamaria, on teaching
Yes.
children, but it's something very brief. As for Delta, Delta is suitable for teaching any age group, from young learners to adults. So what happens with Delta is that I'll talk a little bit about each of the modules, right? So first of all, Delta is different from CELTA in the sense that it's longer. It's a longer process because there's 3 modules, and CELTA is just one module because it's only one certification, right? The 3 modules, they are independent, so you don't have to do them in order, right? The first module is a test. You have to sit for this test. You don't have to take any kind of preparatory course, but it's recommended that you do. It's actually very difficult to prepare for the test if you don't have any kind of help. So this exam is about understanding language, methodology, and resources for teaching. So there will be questions about language. There will be questions about phonology. There will be questions about if you understand this course, syntax of the English language. So you have to further your knowledge on the English language. But there will also be questions on methodology. So I remember that when I took module 1, there was a question about audio-linguistic methodology and how it might be useful for learners, like which kind of learner would benefit from using audiolingual method in activities. So it's like a test where you have to, there's no alternatives. You have to write all the answers, and you really have to put your knowledge and apply it and sort of prove the examiner that you know your theory, you know your language, but you also know what to do with that theory and that language. Module 2 is all about developing your professional practice. So that happens, and then module 3 is the one that is most similar to CELTA, because you also have input sessions. And after you do the input sessions, you have to teach your own students. So CELTA is pre-service in the sense that the center will provide voluntary learners for you to teach, right, Anamaria? So you don't have to have any kind of group for you to take the CELTA. And Delta, you have to teach your own learners. So it's in service. It's an in service uh, certificate. So you will be teaching your own learners, putting in practice what you have done, what you have seen in the input sessions, and the examiner will watch you teaching your own learners. So it's great because you have a chance of writing about. So when you write the lesson plan, it's a little bit more detailed than the lesson plan uh, from CELTA, because, for example, you have to write the profile, you have to write about the profile of your learners, and then you can justify the choices that you made in your lesson based on the learner's profile. So really, in the Delta, the examiners encourage us to make conscious choices, right? It's all about making the best possible choices in for the students that you are teaching. Yes, guys, I can hear the noise as well, but it's also not here, so I don't know what's going on. I'll just keep going, and hopefully you guys can hear me all right. As for the module 3, you have to write um, uh, an essay. It's a longer essay. This essay is about 3,000 words long, and you can choose between two options. So option 1 is extending practice and EOT specialism, or English language teaching management. So I chose the first option when I took CELTA, and inside the first option, you can choose your specialism. So you can choose writing for like teaching children, or teaching academic English, or teaching for certificates. So it's actually, you have to, I said it's an essay, but it's actually a course that you have to propose. And then in this essay, you have to justify the choices that you made in the course that you planned. So it's great. Module 3 is amazing if you would like to become a materials writer. In fact, I feel my career has progressed a lot, in the sense that I actually became a materials writer after I finished module 3. So it definitely represented professional development for me. Um, so the way that you are assessed in these 3 different modules is like this. So in module 1, you need to do a written examination. Like I said, you need to sit for an exam. In module 2, you need to create a portfolio of coursework, which includes lesson observations. So in your portfolio, we're going to include the reports that your tutor sends you after your evaluations. And module 3, again, you have to deliver a written assignment. So you have to write a text and deliver to the center. I have 2 very distinct experiences in 2 distinct areas where I professionally am active, because I have been a teacher for a very long time, but I'm also, like, right now I'm starting a PhD. So I also have a master's degree, and so I can compare these 2 experiences, right? A more academic experience and a more practical classroom experience. And what I can tell you guys is that Delta has been amazing because it helped me to put all that wonderful academic experience into practice. And it really has helped me deepen my knowledge, not only of the English language teaching, but also of English language itself. Many people, many other Delties, like people that took the Delta with me, would comment that it's almost painful in the beginning, because if you are taking Delta, it means that you are experienced, it means you have been studying and teaching English for a while. But then when you start Delta, you realize that there's a lot you don't know. So it takes a little bit of, you have to be
Yeah.
humble to accept that there's always more to learn. But that's also wonderful, right, Ana
Yeah.
Maria?
Can I make a comment? Yes. I think that the delta you said can be quite painful. I agree, because when you take the delta, you should be ready to really step outside of. I'm not going to use the expression comfort zone, but step outside your routine as a teacher, even if that routine is effective, etc. But you must be ready to, take the leap, take risks, and experiment. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a very important condition for someone to take the Delta. And of course, doing this, like taking this risk, is not always very pleasant, right? But it's worth every second. I
Every
agree with
second.
Cássia on that for sure. Yeah.
And some of you that were asking questions about ICELT. So what happens is that ICELT was slightly more, I want to say slightly more academic, slightly more complex than CELTA. So to take ICELT, you deepened your knowledge a little bit more of the English language and systems and everything. But then what happened, to be quite honest, is that many teachers would take CELTA and ICELT and then would not go for Delta, either because they were afraid or because they thought it was too much. Like, this is only for, no, what I want to tell you is that this is for you, Trust me when I say that Delta is not too much. It is a lot of hard work, I'm not going to lie. But it was a life-changing experience. And I would like all of you to seriously consider, I don't know, going for this challenge, because I feel that maybe 10 years ago, it was thought to be something unachievable, very distant, like not something that you needed to do or something like that. And I really think that taking Delta is something that is achievable, is possible, is life changing. It changes careers, and it really helps us to professionalize our area. So I see so many of my peers who took Delta with me doing wonderful things, becoming respected professionals, becoming independent tutors, becoming independent teacher trainers, but who are not in any center. I see many of my peers progressing in their careers in the institute where I work for. So it is really a great opportunity, a great professional opportunity to take Delta. I don't know, Anna, would you like to say anything else about Delta?
Well, actually, Lucas, Leonardo might suggest don't try to be perfect and instead enjoy a learning experience for sure. Yes, that's right. Anyway, we know that we'll never be perfect anyway, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But yeah,
And
no,
also,
I would, yes, yeah, go
no,
on.
no, go ahead, Anna, please.
Um, I was going to say that the Delta can, if that's what you have in mind, the Delta can open doors for you. So, for example, if you want to be a CELTA tutor, you need to have the Delta, for example, just to give you an example. Also, if you're planning to do a master's abroad, um, in the field, right? The fact that you have the delta means that there's a whole part of the course that you don't need to take. It's already, the delta would be the equivalent there. So that's a lot of work that you don't have to do, and a lot of money as well. Let's face it, right? If you're paying in dollars or pounds, etc. So there's that as well. But I'd just like to also say that the delta is great if you want to stay where you are, which is in the classroom. Because many times we forget that, come on, most of us, we want to be in the classroom. Do I have to become a teacher, trainer, or what have you? No, no, but I'm sure you want to be the best teacher you can be, right? So that's what I wanted to
Yes.
say here.
There are some questions that I wanted to address. So I think Janaki, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, asked about age range, saying that they're in their early 40s. So yes, please, there's no age range. Like we have taught people who were younger than that and people who were older than that. I had peers who were younger and older when I was taking Delta, and I'm sure Anamaria has had experience with her self-tees that are younger and older than that. So that's absolutely not an issue. And in terms of age, I think it's never like too late or too early to learn, right? And then
Yeah,
Christina, go ahead, Anna, please
and I was
finish.
just going to add that, just as I mentioned earlier, that it's wonderful to have this diversity. So you have someone who has never taught in their lives with someone who's been teaching for 20 years, and the exchange is incredible, right? The same regarding the different ages that we have in the CELTA. So yeah, I mean, it makes things even richer and more enjoyable for sure.
Right, and then Christina mentioned that she heard someone saying that CELTA is painful sometimes. I think it's the pain of learning, isn't it? Growing is painful, so definitely
Yeah,
it is,
and
but it's
we,
worth it.
yeah, and I mean, as a Celta tutor, one thing that we always say to people, and we have to be honest about this. Every time it's not only the Celta, but every time you decide to invest in your development, there will be investment, of course, financial. I mean, you're going to, you're going to invest money, but you're also going to invest time and energy. So, yeah, the workload is, it's reasonable. So you need to be aware of that. Why? So you can kind of organize yourself. I don't think you can ever eliminate any like stress completely, but I think if you manage your time well, you can reduce this stress and make the most of it. So at
Yes.
times, let's be honest, right, Cassie, as with anything, things can get a bit overwhelming. But then once it's all over, you say, oh, now let's go to the next course. So there's a CELT equivalent for business English. No, there isn't, Lais. There
But
isn't.
for
Yeah,
Delta, you can spec like in in module 3, the one I
you
mentioned,
can
where you
specialize. Yeah,
yeah, you can
yeah,
specialize in business English.
yeah.
There was another question. I don't know. Well, you can see my email and Ana Maria's email in the screen. So if you guys have any more questions, or if you would like to send us a message, or if you want to just say hi, you can send us the email there, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Let's see. Delta, Alberto has written an interesting message here, right? Helps to establish a tangible benchmark professional development. That is what makes a professional experience, right? Only the number of years teaching will not suffice for sure. So you need to keep expanding and and like developing your reflection. And
mhm.
I think this is a very interesting comment, Roberto, because even reflection by itself, or many times you are already a reflective practitioner, etc. But sometimes you reach a point where you need some external push or external input, right? To keep going, keep developing, keep moving. So I think both the Celta and the Delta, they serve this purpose in different moments of a career, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was Laís that mentioned before that she's an undergraduate student and she would like to take CELTA after she graduates. I highly encourage you to do that, Laís. It was actually what I did. I finished my grad course and then I took CELTA, and it was a great experience because I felt that the graduate course was very theoretical, and then I took CELTA, which was more practical. So, and also as for what Alberto mentioned, I never forget a session that I had actually in CELTA that my tutor mentioned, like, do you have 10 years experience, or do you have 1 year experience that you have repeated 10 times? So that's actually a quote by Penny Ure, and I really believe in that. Like, we should never, I feel that that's part of our job, right? If you're a teacher, you should never stop learning and you should never stop developing, because we are in the business of helping others learn and develop. So if we
Yeah.
stay put for too long, then it's not good for us, I feel.
Yeah, I just to share something. When I was finishing my Delta, I had the privilege of working for a couple of days, like with Adrian Underhill, um, teacher, trainer, author of um, many texts and books on pronunciation. But anyway, so he came to São Paulo. He spent a couple of days with us. We were preparing for the exam, but to cut a long story short, I never remember something he said to me, because in the UK you need a teacher's license, right? I mean, we have this as well. We have licenciatura, but there I think things are stricter. And I remember he said to me, if a teacher stops learning, they should lose their license. And that stuck with me as well, because of course that's our job as well. It's more about learning than teaching, even, right? So there you are.
I think it's also about attitude. So we should keep up with article reading and just being curious and making sure that we're updated. And definitely CELTA and Delta can help us with that.
That's right.
Well,
Right.
so again, that our emails are there. Please make sure to write us if you have any questions.
Yes, please drop us a line. It would be lovely to hear from you. And again, thank you so much. It was really great to be here, and with all the questions and comments. Yeah, it was. I hope you enjoyed it as well, right, Cassie?
Yeah, so if you don't have any more questions, I think that's it. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with us in this afternoon, and we hope to see you. I hope to be a CELTA tutor trainee when you guys are taking CELTA with
Oh,
the
yes.
wonderful tutor, Anamaria. So thanks
Oh,
so
thank
much
you. Yeah, I
for.
hope to see many of you around. Thank you. Thank you, Alberto. Lovely to see you. Thank you, everyone.